People first organizations will win in the future of work.
Your only real asset is your people.
We all want purpose-driven work.
HR-led organization is the
I'm
future.
sorry, but leaders don't lead empty desks and empty shop floors.
Welcome to the People Strategy Leaders Show. I'm your host, Sri Chellappa, founder and president of Engagedly, and a serial entrepreneur in technology, films, and music. This is where we talk to people leaders, business strategists, and organizational savants about leading in the time of change. What is working, what is not working, and more importantly, what we should be thinking about. Stick around to the end of the show. We will reveal how you can be our next guest. And now, let's engage. Hello, this is Sri Chellappa again with People Strategy Leaders podcast. And today I have the honor of having Omonuwa Olulano, who's a chief HR leader for Appzone, which is a company based in Lagos, Nigeria. Omonuwa serves as a chief human resources officer, bringing a wealth of knowledge and array of experiences in diverse sectors, including financial services, e-commerce, nonprofit, and technology. In her current role, leading the HR team, Omonuwa works to help the Appzone group connect, develop, and nurture its exceptional and passionate talents while helping them discover and maximize their potential. Well, welcome to the show, Omonuwa. Really excited to have you here and talk to you again.
Thank you, Sri. Thank you for having me.
You know, it's not every day that I have a discussion with somebody from Africa, and there's so much potential there, especially where you are in Nigeria, which is some of the best engineers I've known have come from there. So tell me a little bit about Appzone, which sounded very exciting from what I read, and obviously you're one of our Engagedly clients. Full disclosure, it sounds like what you guys are doing is the next generation of fintech.
Yes.
So what does Appzone do, and what is your what problem are you trying to solve?
Okay, so Appzone Group is a fintech company. We are a payment infrastructure company leveraging on the blockchain technology. And we've been doing this for recently 4 years. Before that, we have actually been experimenting with cutting-edge technology to deliver automated and digitized solutions to our financial institution clients, so from the banking application all the way to multi-bank direct debits, all the way to card issuance and processing, and all the way to merchant banking. For us, it's really helping them automate and digitize their processes. And they're able to focus on delivering value to their customers. So we're more of an infrastructure builder, but focused on enhancing financial services within the financial ecosystem.
Okay. And so your clients are they primarily in Nigeria or overall in Africa or the entire world?
So currently they're more in Nigeria, but we have clients cut across different countries in Africa, from Ghana to Kenya, Rwanda, and South Africa.
That's awesome. So building an infrastructure like that requires obviously high level of skilled talent,
Yes.
and building a very strong team. And then obviously, so you are in that position where your role is to make sure that you have an organization with the best talent, performing at their full potential. So tell me a little bit about how did you go about identifying some of the challenges that you were looking to solve, or some of the improvements you wanted to make as you got on board with this organization?
Okay, so I got on board early last year, and one of the key things for me was to get aligned with the vision. What are we trying to achieve here? And literally, like I mentioned, we are steering the transition into DeFi, decentralized financing, for Africans. So it was a case of where are we at and where do we need to be? So looking at the different touch points in the employee life cycle. So all the way we attract talent, to the way we onboard them, to the way we grow them, support their growth aspirations, and all the way to offboarding. And it was taking an audit of what we have done so far and what we could do better.
So
All right?
So when you're doing that, obviously one of the things that, when we were talking earlier, you're a big fan of, goal setting,
Yes,
OKRs and KPIs.
yes.
So what was the problem you're trying to solve with that in the context of your organization, and then how did you go about using that as a approach?
Okay, so like you rightly pointed out, what we are trying to do, we need the best talents, right? And so for us, it was how do we enhance our efforts in the strategy of building a high performance culture, and really narrow down on performance. So how are we able to enhance productivity, and you would agree with me that employees are productivity is enhanced when employees are fully connected to the vision and the mission of the organization, when they understand how the impact they have in their little corner there on their role is impacting on the organizational goals and values, So it was looking at performance, it was taking the performance management process to say, how do we make it progressive, and then really breaking it down. So what did we currently have, and what were the areas we could optimize, or improve on? Right.
Right.
And and so one of the major areas that we identified and in this journey of making it a progressive performance management process was the fact that there wasn't a very clear laser alignment between individual contribution to the organizational goals for the year, right? That was one. Two, performance for us is not just about, when people say, oh, the carrot and the stick, and then the stick approach is, oh, you're monitoring people. If they don't do well, you exit them from the organization. No, for us, it's how do we work with you in such a way that we're able to support you in those areas where you need improvement, so we are constantly watching when there's a constant feedback, that real time and check-ins, regular check-ins that help you know as an employee, as an individual contributor, that I'm on the right track. These are the areas that I can improve on. And then also giving us insights into those gaps in terms of the skills or competences, the skills and knowledge, abilities required for you to deliver on your role, what those gaps are, and how we can quickly plug them with any L&D initiative or, efforts. Literally. So that was a second part. So how could we incorporate constructive, honest, productive feedback into the performance management process? And then thirdly, like I mentioned, focus on the development of the employee. So in that progress, in the check-ins, as the person is working towards achieving on their objectives, you're also determining those skills, knowledge, and abilities that they need, that they currently have gaps in, that you need to support them to upskill them in, and so that was the way we looked at it, and that was like really the strategy, to building a progressive management, performance management process.
So that's obviously a lot to do,
Yes.
given that, because it's a lot of change management.
Yes.
I don't know where the maturity level was of the organization when you came in. So in that journey, where are you today, and where else do you look to go in that journey in the near term?
So I would say we have taken significant strides, but there's still a lot of work to do. So we had to, like, breaking down the process, like you rightly said, is a change management process. It was a huge one because the spotlight hadn't been on individual contribution, but more on the department or the team contribution as a whole, And so it was getting everyone to, first of all, understand the concept of OKRs, because it was a new methodology we're introducing into the system. Understand the concept of OKRs, especially our managers who would really guide the setting of those goals and key results, and then helping them build the attitude or the habit of having regular check-ins with their direct reports, and then a fourth part I forgot to mention was we were very big on automating this entire process. The way that we had, clear empirical data, to see the progress of individual employees and how it impacted on the overall organizational goals. So it was breaking it into, like small steps. First of all, getting everyone to understand the concept of OKRs, imbibing the culture of having constant honest, productive feedback, and then having everyone embrace the platform, and I dare say that Engagely has really done that for us in helping us automate the process. It wasn't exactly an easy journey choosing a platform to do all of this for us, but reaching out to Engagely team, working with your team, the support, the flexibility was really awesome. And I would say we have taken significant strides. Now, as an organization, we are focused on looking back to say, what can we optimize and what can we do better? We have a lot of work to do in the area of feedback. We have a lot of work to do in the area of recognition, which is a very important part of the performance management process. We already have reward, already part of our DNA, but how do we encourage managers to publicly or privately recognize the contribution of their direct reports, in such a way that they are meeting an intrinsic need of value.
Yeah.
For that direct report.
Yeah. So going back to goals, I as a leader myself in Engagedly, one of the things I feel is goal setting is a key component of people's strategy.
Yes.
Even though it's considered in many organizations as part of your financial or business strategy. But if you don't translate goals directly to teams and people, then people don't really know what they're working towards sometimes, right?
Okay.
I mean, back in the day, Lackham and Loth did a lot of research on goal setting theory, and there was some really interesting research that came out. In fact, there was another research that was done in 2015, as I was looking at some of the data, that people who wrote down their goals, just the fact of writing down their goals, were 33% more successful in achieving their goals than the people who did not do that and just kept it in their head. So just the mere act of writing down the goals can make a huge impact on outcomes for an organization and for the individual and the teams themselves. So, kudos to you and the team to take on that approach, because one of the things with goal setting is you're putting it out there. So now you're somewhat accountable and responsible for achieving the goal. And you're also making that alignment to the organizational goals, so that gives you some purpose and meaning to the work you do. So that's one of the reasons we are a big proponent ourselves of goal setting internally and externally to our clients and to anybody who will listen to me. So that's my point of view on that. So I don't know, it might be still early days, but what kind of results have you seen from these initiatives that you have undertaken?
So on just speaking to the performance management aspect, we actually on the impact on the bottom line of the business, we actually have grown, and I can give a rough estimate of about between 10 to about 15x in terms of growth. Just having managers more accountable for the growth of their direct reports, it's really something progressive to watch, so you now have managers saying, these are the skills required they are now more knowledgeable about the skills required for the individual roles under their direct oversight. They are much aware of the strengths of their team members, and they're actually willing to go into conversations. I remember when we started, a lot of managers shied away from giving feedback. They go, how am I able to tell this person that this thing you have done doesn't meet the expectation, but do it in a very honest and productive way that stirs that person to really critically look at those gaps and make an improvement to make it better. But we have made progress. We had a couple of trainings, it's a continuous process. It doesn't ever end, and then we're actually seeing a lot of the managers take ownership for their teams. And then we're seeing performance actually grow higher, actually, in terms of output and the position of the organization.
Yeah. One thing that is very true is that a lot of managers and individuals in general are afraid to give feedback. Positive feedback to some extent is also something that people are not very generous with. I think that people need to be more generous with their appreciation and recognition. But critical feedback for improving performance or improving behavior or changes in behavior, I think is also important. I think the reason being they're afraid of how they might be perceived. They don't want to necessarily
Exactly.
hurt the relationship that they have, but you're not doing anybody any favors by not actually having the discussion. So
Yeah,
having a good, maybe a framework for that on providing good feedback in a structured way that actually doesn't seem like you're hurting or pointing somebody out. You're actually pointing out a behavior, not the person, So
exactly.
that's,
Yeah.
I think that's been a change of mindset that people need to have when they're giving feedback.
Yeah.
In many circles we hear, I've heard this before, and I don't know how you feel about it, but we think feedback is a gift, because you're helping the other person improve by doing that.
Mhm.
So it's very glad to hear that you guys are really doing a fantastic job in driving that feedback culture within the organization
Yeah.
to make that improvement. So what about some of the challenges, not necessarily challenges, but approaches you took to make sure the managers were were enabled, or they felt that they could give feedback without having a lot of hesitation about hurting their relationship?
Okay, so one major thing that helped was the training. And what was shared in the course of those workshops was the fact that you need to see feedback as you objectively helping this person see a behavioral trait that they can either drop or enhance on,
Hmm.
and if you think about it that way, you're not witch hunting the person, you're not victimizing the person, you're actually looking towards the growth of that individual, while they work with you and then eventually move on. So it helped having those workshops, talking to them, and then actually having scenario-based training. So we had, sessions where you would put it into like a practice to say, okay, how would you give feedback to this kind of employee if you get this progress report on a particular objective and all of that stuff? And it greatly helped. Another thing was the fact that because everyone had that mindset that you're not giving feedback to exit the employee at the end of the day, you're giving feedback to support the growth of the employee and help them, excel better on the job. It kind of got them to latch onto the check-ins. So when they go in for the weekly, some managers meet weekly, some meet bi-monthly, you actually have that correspondence on, and I'm speaking to the platform here, where under each goal, you're able to put your comments in to say, I had these challenges, I had this blocker, and the manager is able to provide guidance to say, did you look at it from this perspective? Did you try this? Maybe we could look at XYZ to help you achieve, better traction on the goal and all of that stuff. So I would say two key things that helped: one, the trainings, and then secondly, the constant orientation that it's geared towards the growth of the employee, not necessarily you having to exit the employee from the organization. If that eventually happens, both parties can clearly see that there's been a lot of support, in enabling that employee improve on the job.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, I'm very, very pleased, and it heartens me that you've taken that approach in the organization. So kudos to you for doing that. As an HR manager who's listening to this show, I'm sure not everything went 100% perfect in your approach. So what are some of the lessons learned that you would want to convey out there, that and some of the recommendations that you would give them?
Okay, so lessons learned, I would say, get all your stakeholders to buy into the change. And when I say stakeholders, I'm not saying stop at management or stop at the founder level or the C level or the exec. I mean, get all the managers all the way to, if you have them, leads, get their buy-in, get their input, get their feedback. That way it enriches your approach to implementation, right? And then when you get those feedback, take them seriously, because they are the ones who function in those roles. They know the peculiarities that they face, so take their feedback and then, incorporate it as much as possible into the process. And then you can't just take the approach that once I have deployed a system, then I can go to rest. It would automatically run itself. You have to constantly have workshops, trainings, constantly reevaluate the process to say, what can we do better? What are we optimizing? What can we stop? What can we change, revise upon, and all of that, improve upon, basically. So you have to know that it's a continuous process till everyone understands and it becomes part of their culture. It becomes part of the way we work as an organization. It's something that you always have to constantly review for improvements, areas of improvement. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Omonuwa. That's very helpful. Getting stakeholder buy-in is extremely critical as part of the change management process, because, just because you have a great process, it doesn't mean it's going to, take off and work on its own.
Exactly.
And even if you implement it, it doesn't mean it's going to work 6 months out. You have to stay on
Exactly.
top of it and repeat
Yes,
and
and
repeat.
constantly review.
And there's no such thing as over communication. You can communicate again and again the same message, maybe in different words, but the same message. And that's the only way you get the buy-in that you want. And obviously the results will bear fruit at the end of the day if you're, obviously if you're taking the right approach.
Yeah.
So, Omonuwa, what, last couple of questions I have, one is how would you describe your leadership style as a leader? When you're thinking about, how you go about building your team and how you work with the people and getting things done, how would you describe your leadership style in that context?
So I would say it's a blend. There are times where I'm very democratic, and there are times where I'm very authoritative. It depends on, it's situational. It depends on what the situation calls for. But more importantly for me is the fact that I try to ensure that everyone sees the big picture. If everyone sees the big picture, at least you're able to explain that big picture in a way that they can relate with it, right? You actually have solved more than half of the issue of underperformance, because they clearly understand where the team is working towards and what we're trying to achieve, and then I deal with a lot of empathy. I lead with a lot of empathy, because we're human beings, we're not robots. The only way you can get the best out of people is when they are fully committed and emotionally they are connected, to the vision, either the organization or the department. So as much as possible, I try to check up on them beyond work. See them as people that have lives beyond work. I know that we're moving into a space right now where work is life and your life is work. But the reality is that, they have families, they have loved ones, they have bills, they have issues, not within the workspace. So as much as possible, offering that shoulder where they can talk about those things, you're interested in their well-being as people, and then connecting them to the bigger picture. But then I can also be very firm when I need to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to be, to make sure that things do move forward, and
exactly,
eventually, it's still a business you have to run. So, Omonuwa, it's been a pleasure talking to you. How can people reach you?
So my profile is on LinkedIn. I have my email address there on my profile, Omonuwa Olulano, and that's my name. It'll pop up.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Omonuwa, and all the best in your journey and the journey of Appzone. You guys are doing some amazing things for in the country of Nigeria and Africa as a whole. So I'm very impressed and excited to be working with your team as well. So thanks again.
Thank you, Sri. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Okay. Until next time.
All right then. Bye. Thank you.
Sri Chellappa here. Thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you are a successful leader or a people strategist who would like to be on this program, please visit engagedly.com/People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show, and include the hashtag People Strategy Leaders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Sri Chellappa. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. And thank you to Patrick Ramsey, sound engineer at Kalinga Production Studios, for recording and mixing this show.